Shaykh Yasir, you have done me a big favor by coming back on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's been a while, and people start to think that something happened between you. And did you and Shaykh Yasir break up?
No, alhamdulillah. We've been through a lot.
Yeah, we have been through a lot through this.
We've been through the mountains and deserts of Morocco together, and I think we can handle some.
That was an amazing trip, wasn't it?
We've been together in goats, and if you and I managed to sit together with a goat in a minibus, I think we can manage this.
You know, that, to everyone listening, that's actually a beautiful story. Shaykh Yasir and I accompanied Shaykh Mokhtar. How many years ago was that, Shaykh Yasir?
I don't remember. It must have been like 7-8 years ago.
7-8 years ago, on this like epic journey to Morocco to have suhbah with Shaykh Mokhtar and a few other brothers and visit some of the mashayikh. And we went to this town. It was called Tinejdad. And we're going to go visit a zawiya there of these ulama and ubbad. And Shaykh Mokhtar tells us, like, you can't go empty-handed. The Arab tradition is you cannot go empty-handed. So I'm thinking, okay, Sheikh's going to buy a cake. Shaykh is going to get like some sort of gift. I said, okay, Shaykh, what would you like to bring? He goes, we need to get them a live sheep. I said, a live sheep? Go. It was a goat. It was a goat. Right, you're a goat. It was a goat. He said, we need to give them a live goat. I said, live goat. I said, we're like out in the middle of nowhere. We're going to get this live goat. Remember that, Shaykh Yasir? So I said to the driver, I'm like, his name is Usama, beautiful brother. I said, Usama, like, we need a live goat. He's like, I know a place.
I know a guy.
We're like out there. If you look up on a map, Tinejdad, maybe Sajjad, you can bring up a map of Morocco while we're talking.
The eastern deserts of like Morocco. Yeah. Eastern, not deserts, but like
yeah. And so we go and we find this guy who sells goats, and we buy a goat. And then how many? There's like 15 of us, and Shaykh Yasir take it from there.
No, so we so Shaykh Mokhtar and Moutasem actually got down to manage the goat situation. The rest of us, we were in 15, or maybe 10 or something. And then when you came back and we were sitting, and then the goat comes and sits in our midst. And so we were hanging out in the microbus with a goat that accompanied us for a while. I think it was another like hour or two until we got there.
Until we got to the village, until we got to the zawiya, yeah.
MashaAllah. And that was, I mean, there's so much beauty in that weekend, or in that particular trip. But I remember the blessing of just being in this suhbah of people who, they seem so far removed from our reality as Western Muslims. But then you go sit with them, and clearly the souls are connected, because you just feel connected, you feel in love, you feel elated. And then to watch them go through their rituals and practices, like the way they even welcomed the goat, received the goat, and then processed the goat, all was very methodical. They had a clear process of how, they would slaughter and then dismember and process each part of the goat, and then each type of preparation for each part. And much of it was done, in front of us in this like open space.
Yeah.
We sat and the major slaughtering happening, that was right outside the gathering space, but inside a lot of the processing was happening. It's almost to show us like the blessing of what you brought us, and then we're preparing it now for you. And so we ended up eating, I think we ate that goat from probably around 6-7 p.m. until 2 a.m. we were
yeah.
And then we continued after Fajr, if you recall.
Yeah. That was amazing. Yes. The Sheikh of the Zawi brought it out. And you know what was amazing also, Shaykh Yasir, about that time is that there was no talk of the dunya the whole time we were there. Not one word about the dunya. We entered, they greeted the Sheikh, they greeted Shaykh Mokhtar. Shaykh Mokhtar greeted the Sheikh of the Zawiya. We entered into like this big sada, this sitting space. And it was just all dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from that moment until I think we left a little bit after Fajr the next day.
Yeah, I think so. What I recall was that since we sat inside that gathering space, it was like probably 6 hours of dhikr and afkar al-salihin, like just stories of the righteous, a hadith, the pause to and we're eating the whole time. By the way, we're just consuming. They're bringing us like different types of preparation of the meat, and there was a tea. Remember the guy with the tea station?
Allahu Akbar.
He was sitting right in front of me. He was just preparing the tea very methodically. Everyone had a role. The kids were singing qasaid, just very beautiful, I mean, when I thought about the cultural production, like this is their inherited tradition, and this is what they're passing down to our children. I couldn't help but think, like, what are the cultural practices and the cultural traditions that our children here in the West have?
Oh boy.
You think about it, and just if you recall, CD, like you go back into that time, it's just like, man, I mean, you had little kids. I remember one young boy, and we have the recording somewhere.
Muhsin.
The boy, remember when he was doing the
I'm gonna find him.
Yeah, if you can find it. And then, Shaykh Mokhtar was weeping. We were all weeping at the beauty of this boy's voice and his praise of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I was thinking, Ya Rabbi, grant us in the West, grant us in the US children who have a love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But then he is a product of an ecosystem. That boy is a product of an ecosystem of mahabba. People gather together regularly, and they praise and they sing the praises. The mothers, the fathers, the children, the aunts, the uncles, the whole tribe is together. And that was
amazing. And that's what we want for our kids, because I remember we were in this room, and then all of a sudden we hear this voice coming from behind a pillar. Young Muhsin, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this boy from the awliya, al-arifin, al-ulama. I think we have a video. Sajjad, let's pull up this video.
مريد البديع بقلب حاضر مريد البديع بقلب حاضر لسان ذكير في قولك الله لسان ذكير في قولك الله 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 شهدت شهيد كل الفوائد شهدت شهيد كل الفوائد سر الأماجد في قولك الله سر الأماجد في قولك الله الله
Allah, Shaykh Yasir.
That just transported us, huh?
Allah, I'm in Tinejdad.
Allah Akbar. Yeah, just I mean that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, Habib, and the Suhba Tayyibah. That was that trip is etched in my heart, in terms of, and then subhanAllah, if you recall, after Fajr, and we had slept like maybe 2 hours or something. After Fajr, like that's when we actually started to have some of the akhbar of each other, if you recall, bringing up the silsila and and that whole story. And but we didn't really get any ta'aruf, get to know one another until after Fajr. So what was also really striking to me was the whole introduction to the bond and connection between us was Allah wa Rasuluh. And then it's like, okay, then we get to know each other. Like now that we've kind of locked our hearts together and our bonds are deeply embedded in the love of Allah and His Messenger, then we get to know each other like the dunya we knowing, like who are you from, what do you do, and then you start to learn about each person who was in this room for all night, and we didn't really realize that this person is a lawyer who is the head of X and the head of Y and represents this, and I was like, subhanallah.
Yeah, that all became secondary, and it's so interesting about that, because typically you go into a dinner, here in the States, and you sit down, and the first question is, what do you do for a living? So you're defined by your career.
Yeah.
And so there was no definition by what we did for a living. What we did for a living was remember Allah and His Messenger. Everything else was secondary. So, Muhsin, Allahu Akbar. May Allah allow us to repeat that visit. Ya Rabbi.
Ya Rabb, Ameen. Jami'an, Ya Rabb.